The rich guests treated a black maid like furniture, making fun of her, ignoring her, and mocking her. However, everyone in the room went silent when a journalist out of nowhere recognized her. What came next was more than uncomfortable. It left an indelible impression. The crystal glassware and polished silver reflected the midday sun as it splattered across the marble flooring of the Lancaster estate. As the sound of a string quartet wafted across the room through the open French doors, merriment and bubbly ensued. With a series of clinks, the yearly charity brunch got underway, silently making her way from table to table. Noel, Sinclair went unnoticed, unless someone requested more. A crisp white shirt, a black skirt that fell just below the knee, and immaculate white gloves made up her impeccable outfit. Like a dancer who was at ease on stage but never wanted the spotlight. She delicately washed each cutlery with silent perfection, her fingers steady and her movements elegant. A woman adorned in pearls snarled an apology without raising her eyes to the sky. "There are wet patches on this fork." Without saying a word, Amira nodded and grabbed the utensil with a friendly but trained grin. She remained unfazed as the woman sighed with an exaggerated sense of relief, and a man whispered behind her that service isn't the same as it once was. Genevieve Harrington observed Amira from across the patio with an expression of dispassionate authority. She made a small motion toward the ice bucket with her delicately manicured palm. "Fill up the champagne flutes," Amira read the sign. Invisibly, quickly and silently, the staff moved like shadows. Amira, though, was somebody else entirely, not only in her demeanor, but also in her attentive listening. Although I do receive donations and one patron found humor in shrimp cocktail, I fail to see the point in hosting it on the front yard. Someone else said, "Sure, she's doing good work, but has anyone ever asked about the whereabouts of the funds?" She recognized the familiar tone, haughty, ignorant, and tainted with the type of ignorance that usually confused riches for wisdom, even though they weren't mentioning Amira by name. Unnoticed by anybody, she hid a lock of hair behind her ear, exposing a set of delicate and pricey earrings that sparkled with gold. Amira went momentarily behind the buffet table as the guests sipped, spoke, and posed. She took her watch out of her apron pocket and peered at it. It was just a little gesture, but it wasn't right. She caught the light with her sleek, silver-trimmed watch that shimmered with a sapphire at its core. Absolutely no way was that a maid's watch. She swiftly averted her gaze, but not before a younger server noticed the glimmer. He didn't say a word, but his head tilted slightly in curiosity. After that, Amira kept going around. She would smile when asked, look down when anticipated, but occasionally she would pause for an extra second as she passed a group of people who were in the middle of gossiping. She wasn't merely taking orders, she was taking notes, while also listening and watching. From the veranda, Mrs. Lancaster's fragile and loud voice echoed. "In 15 minutes, all of you, we will begin the speeches. The champagne should continue to flow. Prevent glasses from becoming dry." Before Amira could go to the main cooler, her phone buzzed softly in her apron. She had nodded at the cue. She glanced over there briefly. The screen briefly displayed one message: "I am prepared to board. Requires final clearance." Put the phone back inside, she did. Nothing was conveyed by her face. Behind her placid eyes a tempest was gathering, unexpected fact that caught everyone here off guard. However they would. Sure they would like clockwork. Amira went between tables, wrapped in linen. Her posture was upright, and her hands were firm. However, her soul, the atmosphere in the room was starting to take its toll on her soul. The aroma of roast lamb and warm food wafted through the air as the breakfast got underway. Brioche and mimosas with their tart citrus flavors mixed. She was oblivious to the cacophony of laughter emanating from every direction. She skipped out on the party. She served as a helper, and no one ever gets that out of this group. A flower-hatted woman lost her composure. Indeed, she pointed to her half-empty glass and her fingers snapped. She referred to him as sweetheart without using a name. "No pulp," I answered. With a gentle touch, Amira grabbed the glass, nodded and spun around on her heel. The woman whispered something along the lines of, "Honestly, I don't know how people live like that," as she departed. Then came the laughing, pointy irresponsible. "He still believes this is a decent gig even if she has 6 kids at home." A man across the table added, "Something else made someone laugh in any case she is employed." Of the majority, I would not say that. They were so loud that they wouldn't even whisper. They paid her no mind at all. Reason being, they didn't really notice her. She was little more than a shadow, a movable dish in their meaningless charity extravaganza. The grip on the tray was momentarily tightened by Amira's fingers. She took a small breath in order to stabilize herself, until the number 3 was reached, breathed out. Her mastery of grace under fire was long since attained. Then came Mrs. Lancaster, who strode confidently across the terrace, her smile so contorted it hardly moved. She spoke out angrily, "Amira," without raising an eyebrow. "Yeah, they are it, no problem." Amira said, despite the fact that she had already wiped them down twice. Moving the tray to the corner of the preparation table, she resumed the process of cleaning each flute, but this time she took her time. Why? Because rather than because it was necessary, pause was necessary for her. Once again her phone beeped. As far as she could tell, nobody was looking. As the culinary workers had their breaks behind the ivy-covered divider, she stepped forward to receive the phone. "Dr. Taylor," the voice proclaimed, crisp, respectful. Her tone abruptly changed, but she still gave the go-ahead. With more force, highly competent. "Not here," she employed a low, muffled voice. "The gift has been confirmed. We have finalized your speech slot. Board members are thrilled." Amira spoke positively. At the tables, she stole a quick look at a patron who was dabbing a lipstick-stained wine glass with a linen napkin. "Once this is finished, I will take care of it." With that, she hung up and put the phone back in her apron. With equal ease, her mask was back on. Then the laughter resumed on the floor. "Perhaps we should give her a vacuum," one woman joked, while laughing. God is aware that she resides in filth. Despite feeling sick to her stomach, Amira managed to muster a subtle grin. This, she told herself, would only be here for a little while. This suit, this is the house. It was clear that these folks believed that money could buy them morality. She overheard bits of gossip, pieces of egos and subtle prejudice encased in pearls and perfume, as she replenished drinks and cleared dishes. However, she was not shrinking on the inside, she was doing the math, slowly amassing like a tempest, repelled by determination alone. Being underappreciated could be a powerful thing, and Amira was the one who knew it best. When you stood up, it would hurt you harder because of how high they stared down on you, with the refilling of champagne flutes, the substitution of dessert platters for espresso shots, and the dry theatrical applause for the pianist in the corner. The brunch was gradually building to its expected climax. Dappled light illuminated the white linen and inherited haughtiness as the sun streamed through the estate's enormous garden awning. Amira gracefully cleared the dishes in silence, going unnoticed by everyone. Although she maintained her composure, the time was actually ticking. Afterwards the gate made a gentle chime. As he made his way up the gravel path in his shiny shoes, Marcus Reed materialized, bringing with him an object that had no place in this exquisitely maintained realm of caviar and crystal. A stylish brown briefcase, he silently slipped past the guests and halted just in front of Amira. With a polite drop of his head, he presented it to her. "Whenever you are, ma'am, they will be ready." The words were soft and respectful. With a quick tightening of her grip around the handle, Amira gave a nod. "Thank you," she responded, her voice controlled and quiet. Looking up from her cappuccino, one of the guests across the terrace narrowed her eyes. She seemed to be flitting between recognition and something else entirely. But I am intrigued. As Amira slipped into the house with the case, 2 younger servers leaned toward one another a short distance away, close to the service station. "She drives a Tesla," someone whispered. "Were you aware of that?" "No way," the other person said. "Just a housekeeper." I witnessed her exiting her high-heeled vehicle this morning after parking behind the hedge. Their conversation faded as Amira entered the dry hallway of the mansion, her footsteps barely making a sound on the shiny marble floor. She walked past family portraits with expressionless faces and rooms that had been meticulously staged for the sake of social optics. She moved steadily and with purpose. She made it inside the study, shut the door, and turned the lock with a gentle click. Cooler and quieter than outside, as if in the stillness, just before a curtain rises, was the sensation of being within. After delicately setting the briefcase on the wood desk, she proceeded to snap it open. Within was a sleek, dark laptop, no frills until the screen came to life, exposing the quiet person behind the reserved exterior. There were encrypted dashboards, updates on private equity real-time market fluctuations, and a boardroom calendar that included her name. Amira retrieved a single document, an acquisition summary in preparation for her speech next week in Singapore. The company was a household name, the name of the CEO, one of the brunch guests currently laughing over canapes on the terrace. She reviewed a few notes, adjusted clause, saved the file. Then she accessed her inbox, dozens of unread emails. One caught her attention. Forbes interview confirmed profile slated for next month. She allowed herself the smallest smile, not triumphant, just grounded. Outside, she could still hear the faint sounds of the brunch ensemble, people clinking glasses. Somewhere Mrs. Lancaster was undoubtedly moaning about a fingerprint on her ancestral silver. None of them knew. Not yet, however. Murmurs started to emerge. The briefcase was observed by one of the guests. One of the waiters had gotten sight of her vehicle. The surface was beginning to crumble, and what was hidden beneath was more terrifying than anyone had anticipated. Once again, Amira secured the briefcase and shut the laptop. After adjusting her stance and apron, she proceeded to unlock the door. Not for much longer, but it's time to get back to being yourself. At long last, the time had come. Wine glasses were half uplifted, napkins were wiped at lipstick, and a courteous hum of expectancy filled the air like champagne bubbles. Guests changed their postures accordingly. Standing before the terrace's trellis arch, which was adorned with orchids, was Mrs. Lancaster, who appeared to be preparing to preach. With a smile on her face, she tapped her fork against a glass to silence the room as if she could already hear the applause. Starting off the 7th annual Garden Hearts Brunch, she thanked everyone for their presence. We are incredibly grateful to this organization for their support of digital education for disadvantaged youth, because regardless of background, everyone deserves an opportunity. Yes, I saw it. Like honey dripping off a corroded spoon, the polished sarcasm oozed between her glossed lips. With the silver briefcase at her feet and a folded linen napkin in one hand, Amira stood motionless a few feet behind her. Her gaze swept over the audience, taking in every expression from complete lack of awareness to gaudy pride, until a voice shattered the silence like a piano string. "Hold on a moment, Mrs. Sinclair. Are you a doctor?" Everybody looked over to see the visitor at the table. Leaning forward, a look of bewilderment spread across her face. A young woman with sharp eyes and a cream blazer adorned with a press badge leaned forward, the IT industry backer. "Last year you were named to Wired's 100 list." A veil of thundercloud-like silence enveloped the garden. As if the words had stuck in her throat, Mrs. Lancaster froze. Mid-sentence, lips parted, Amira shifted and his eyes shifted. The sound of her elegant, methodical stride echoed sharply on the flagstone as she advanced. The unseen housekeeper had vanished. Through some miracle she appeared taller than before. Perhaps the burden of pretense had just been lifted. The answer came from Amira in a steady, slow tone. "Yes, I am Noel Sinclair, a doctor." Applause and gasps spread like a rising wind among the attendees. Without flinching, Amira stared. "Using my expertise in software engineering, I have invested heavily in companies over the past decade that are working to create AI with a focus on ethics for use in healthcare and education. Which programs did you highlight today? Donations were initially made via my foundation." Mrs. Lancaster, who was standing motionless with heavy mascara on lashes that blinked a bit too rapidly, caught her eye. "I also funded this very event," Amira added, "including the rental fees for this venue." and the education grants that were just announced. From her briefcase she pulled out a document, a check printed with 7 figures, her name clearly signed in looping black ink. She held it up just long enough for every camera and every eye to catch it. "And before anyone asks," Amira continued with a modest smile, "I volunteered to help today because I wanted to experience directly how people are treated when you think they have nothing to offer you, not a word, just shame, raw, red-faced, uncomfortable silence." Guests who had waved. She could no longer face her gaze without flinching. Mrs. Lancaster loosened her jaw and slightly parted her lips. There was no sound when her throat contracted. As one patron reluctantly placed his mimosa on the table, another straightened his tie. In the vain hope that the journalist would declare it all a farce, some turned to her. Obviously it wasn't. Before stepping back, Amira refolded the check and placed it on the pedestal next to Mrs. Lancaster. No gloating from her. No need for her to boast, thus she refrained from doing so. She was sufficient just by being there. Unquestionable, her truth. Unforgettable, that moment. Why is this important? Starting right now. There was a prolonged hush. The birds perched in the trees above the garden persisted in their melodic songs, oblivious to the fact that a whole social realm had broken out below them. Next, there was the uncomfortable shuffling. It was always interesting to see how people acted when the truth showed up in unexpected shoes. The first to rise and clear his throat was one of the visitors, a man in a pale blue linen suit who had earlier joked about teaching the waiter some manners. "Dr. Taylor," he said as he fidgeted with his cufflinks, "Yes, I didn't know. I sincerely hope that you didn't consider." Just one eyebrow was arched by Amira. His words froze in mid-sentence, and further attendee apologized into her flute of champagne. Another person expressed their admiration for your work as if words of praise could alleviate disapproval. It all fell flat. No, actually, their reason for not apologizing was their observation of to her at this minute. Their apologies stemmed from the fact that they had been noticed. Still, Amira refrained from taking pride. Her expressionless face stayed like way. Their remorse was not the true triumph. She had triumphed because of her serene dignity, every look of superiority. Each request was swiftly met. She felt invisible every time she was around them. From behind the buffet, the younger servers observed their posture slightly more upright now. A girl with her hair pulled back into a bun under a server's cap nodded subtly while her chin lifted and her eyes sparkled. A quiet bow. Despite everything going on around her, Mrs. Lancaster remained motionless. The speech papers she was carrying trembled like withered flowers in her palm. She no longer wore her smile like armor. Now it was fragile. A crack appeared. "Not me, shh," she murmured sharply. Amira turned to her, who she knew better than anybody else. They locked gazes. "I know," she whispered softly. "Yes, that is the issue." The way Mrs. Lancaster blinked was as if she was someone who had heard an echoes from a far land. On the podium next to her, the check was still resting, quite hefty, hard to miss, real. Despite the throng, Amira retrieved her briefcase and made her way through it. As she went by, people's heads cocked, some in wonder and others embarrassed. This time, nobody dared to stop her. She halted as she walked past the caterer's station. Her genuine tip, a folded note, was left on the counter for the personnel. One of the members, who was among the younger staff, ran up to the gate as she approached, gasping for air. "Is this to imply that you are not withholding the funds, Dr. Taylor?" Slowly and deliberately Amira turned around, smiling. "According to her, I am not in this to exact punishment. True grace is something I'm here to show them again." She then departed. The mutterings were heard again behind her. However, things had changed. Be quiet. Much heavier. The value of those whose only possessions was silk, tablecloths and surnames was forced to be re-evaluated. Someone in the kitchen eventually started giggling again. A waiter who had seen the entire A event play out like a movie. According to him, that was legendary. Truly legendary. Everyone was in agreement because the area had been transformed by Noelle Sinclair, the maid who had gone unnoticed, and she had altered the mood of the entire party. "I will be yours forever." Following her, the hefty main door of the estate swung shut, with her neat apron still tied around her waist. Amira stepped into the sunlight, but her posture had changed. Seated with a poised and dignified air, radiating an air of unassuming power, at the stone steps' bore edge, she halted, untied the apron, and neatly folded it in her hands, as if ending some one person's narrative. She continued on her way to the sleek, black automobile that was waiting at the curb. Not looking back, Ethan Brooks, who had previously disregarded her, now hurriedly pried open the door. "Yes, you are, I had no idea." With a kind gesture, she herself got onto the leather seat and shut the door. The Thing's automobile accelerated and disappeared. In the rearview mirror, the home appeared smaller behind her. Everything was muted behind tinted glass. The giggles, the gasps, the uncomfortable silences. Silence them, allow them to recall. The glass buildings that rose above the cityscape like possibility. Steel and brilliance shimmered in the midday light. On the 43rd floor, 15 minutes afterward, the elevator made a faint dinging sound. As her heels clicked against the marble, Amira emerged, her clothing now a fitted navy. At her arrival, her aide was tapping away on a tablet, noting down client calls, market shifts and numbers. A mirth spread on Amira's face. Not because she had disproved their assumptions, but rather because her identity had always been very clear. At the table where important choices were taken, the woman who had previously cleared their plates now sat. And this time, her name would stick in their mind.